All right, take two. Now I have my headphone in, so hopefully you can hear me. Hey, this is the culmination of the 90-day challenge, but uh, I think it's important to know the whole reason and the story. And I apologize for those of you who are going to watch this on Sunday. And hey, Daniel Morris. And I didn't do it on Sunday. Why? I got to be honest. I was a little insecure about totally opening up. Hey there, Gina and Donna. Thanks for joining me. So this story actually started about a summer ago, last summer, and there's a lot of characters. So I hope you can. Hey, Jennifer. I hope you can stay up with this, but it's a real story. I wouldn't have believed this. Thank you, Jennifer. I wouldn't have believed this if it didn't happen to me. If somebody else told me this, I'd be like, yeah, I think you're probably stretching the truth or something, but this is the truth, and you can check with any of my staff or any of my close friends who know the whole story. Hey, thank you, Bob. I appreciate that. I really do appreciate the encouragement on this one. Last summer was a really tough time. And hey, Carrie Nelson, I'm glad you're tuning in because Carrie Nelson, you're a part of this story. You're a big part of this story. So I had not been aware of this before, but last summer I did a sermon. Hey, Ray. I did a sermon at my church, and I was starting to work with pastors, and I had been marketing a certain way and doing a certain thing and sending out, thank you, Albert, and sending out emails. And I've been marketing the same way for about 10 years, and things really were good and were moving forward in momentum, and things were doing okay. And last summer, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, everything changed. And all of a sudden, emails that would normally bring in $12,000 brought in $500. And as most of you know, I have a team that works with me, and I love my team. I love my staff. Like, I am so, and it's not just because they're watching. I am so blessed. And I always say Regina was an answer to my prayers, because she has been so non-judgmental, so helpful. Anyway, so last summer, I'm not someone to do great financial planning. Do not listen to my advice on that. I go to the Dave Ramsey tribe. If you don't know Dave Ramsey, great course called Financial Peace. Well, I took the course, and I thought the course was great, and I was ready to dive in, and that's when all of a sudden, my whole world started crashing. I was trying to gather some evidence, and I had been struggling to all of a sudden keep the business alive. And I love my business. I love what we do. I'm surrounded by cool coaches. But the staff, we have payroll every 2 weeks. My own payroll and my team's payroll. And all of a sudden, it was like each week I didn't know if I was going to hit payroll. And I need my team to take care of Stage Time University. And anyway, I got to a point where I stopped paying myself for a long time. I paid myself just the bare minimum to cover my mortgage. And last summer, when everything fell out, all of a sudden, I was out of money. I had my house. Money was coming in every single day from Stage Time. But you'll know if I love the Fripp advice that when it doesn't matter how much you make, it only matters how much you keep. So if more is flowing out than is flowing in, there's a problem, and eventually it's going to catch up with you. And last summer is when it really did. And so I have some of these things in front of me. So I got to a point right around when I was doing the sermon at church, and right around when I was really adamant about starting to work with pastors, and I did a seminar with Vince, my pastor, for a whole group of pastors, thanks to Curtis. And all of a sudden, nothing was working. I was out of money. And not only was I out of money, I had no savings. I went through that too. I had nothing, and I was barely getting by. And I got this, all of a sudden my car decided to die. And I got this estimate. I have this here as some of my proof from Fletcher Jones last summer. $7,000 to get my car and keep my car going, and I did not have $7,000. Now, I had great friends who were super helpful, and don't get me wrong, if it wasn't for some of my friends, I would have ran out of money. And I was on my knees a lot. I did a lot of praying. Hey, Tina. Hey, Mike Clark. I did a lot of praying, and I really didn't know. I didn't know if I was going to be able to keep my house. And I was behind in the mortgage a few times. Well, somehow, with my prayers and God, I just skimmed by up until October, just this past October. And I got to a point, and I'm probably going to get in trouble with some of my staff, but one of my close friends and staff, I pulled my staff aside and I said, we had all the events all summer, and the events were about at break even, and I love what I do, but the events weren't profitable, and I wasn't bringing enough people in. But when I did the end of the payroll for each of the events, we got to a point where we had no more events. And some of you in Toastmasters know that Toastmasters changed the schedule this year. So whenever I speak at a Toastmaster conference, I do really well. I got a lot of members, but this is the first year that Toastmasters didn't have fall conferences. So 8 weeks of my normal busy schedule were gone. And look, I don't blame Toastmasters. I knew it was coming for 2 years. I blame myself. So I take full responsibility. And when you listen to this story, I don't want anyone to feel bad for me. Like, God is good. Like, I just think it's amazing how he kept things alive. So I got to a point where I told my staff, I said, look, in 2 weeks, I can cover one more payroll, and I honestly don't know if I'm going to be able to pay you after that. And I love my team. I love my staff. And, sometimes people think business-wise, well, why don't you just get, cut back. Well, my staff, has their bills to pay too. But I reached a point where I didn't have any more money. And I pulled my staff aside and said, hey, look, I don't know. I got 2 weeks left, and I don't know what's going to happen. And some of you know that I've been a ClickFunnels. I'm going to plug my phone in, or it's about to die, which is not cool in the middle of this story for sure. Some of my friends know that I'm a ClickFunnels-aholic. So one of the new ways I've been learning marketing was doing ClickFunnels. And that's all well and good, but it took me time to learn it. So my friend Carrie, who's on listening right now, my friend Carrie said, hey, by the way, there's an event in Arizona next week, and it's for the ClickFunnels group and for the 2 Comma Club. So, little background, if you don't know about ClickFunnels, Russell Brunson, I am a huge fan of his. I love his book. And the 2 Comma Club, these are people who invested like $20,000 to learn to get their funnel, so one marketing funnel, to be able to make $1 million in a year. So they're being trained to do that. So I would love to be a part of that, but I got nothing right now. And Carrie, thank you, Carrie, bless you, Carrie, said, hey, there's an event in 2 weeks in Arizona, or in a week in Arizona, and they didn't have the turnout they wanted, so they offered for us to bring a friend for free. And I was like, Arizona? I can walk to there from Vegas. I'm like, I'm in. And Carrie said, well, we're going to drive there. And so I was all excited. I'm like, oh, cool. But how am I going to possibly turn it around in 2 weeks? I had 2 weeks to bring in several $1,000s to be able to cover payroll. I'm like, this is a huge opportunity. Thank you, Carrie. Bless you, Carrie. But now I'm like, okay, but my credit cards, I'm just being open here. My business, my credit cards are at the limit. It's like $60,000 at the limit. I can't get any more credit. I went to banks to try and get us through this. I found a way, got a little bit more leverage for $5,000, but that was it. So here I am going to go to Arizona, and I'm like, I can't even afford the hotel. And I was around here. I have one of my receipts here. I just want you to understand. Shoot, where did that one go? Literally, there it is. All right. So I wanted you to know how bad it was. I'm getting choked up, but like some of my friends were even like giving me food to eat because I didn't have enough to buy food. I actually kept one of the receipts during that time frame. If you look, mac and cheese. I learned from my really cheap pastor, who I love, that if you really look, you can save money. And I started looking through my pantry and my closets, and you get hungry, you'll start eating things you don't have. And so the mac and cheese, I learned for mac and cheese, $2, two boxes of mac and cheese. But if I only eat, like, I could make two bowls out of one box. So now I have two, like, this was 4 meals. $2 was 4 meals. That's where I was at. So they're having the event, the ClickFunnels event, at the JW Marriott. Oops, I don't want to use a name here. JW Marriott in Phoenix. So here I am. Okay, I'm going to go to Phoenix. That's a JW Marriott. I'm like, okay, I'm get to come for free. And, well, wait a minute. I can't afford the JW Marriott. I don't know if I have enough credit. I know going there, and if you know going to a convention or conference, just staying at the hotel, there's such a value to being in the hotel because the conversations and the people you meet in the hallway. But I told my friend Carrie, who's watching right now and commenting right now, I said I can't stay at the hotel. Because it's like a couple $100 a night, and that was the special. It's usually like $400. I'm like, Carrie, I can't stay there. And as she's typing in, she said, I had no idea. Well, that's why this was a tough story to tell. So I get there. This is funny too. You got to find the humor in this as I cry and laugh. So I'm looking into airport hotels. I'm like, Regina, we got to find an airport hotel or some place that's cheaper, Airbnb or something. So we look, and there's $45 for a night at the hotel at the airport. I'm like, I could do that. But then when I looked at the distance between the airport and the actual event, it was like a $85 Uber ride. I was like, oh man, you're killing me. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, Carrie says to me, she calls up, she says, hey, we're going to have 2 rooms. And she had a bunch of friends coming. And she said, we gave one of the rooms away because a few of us weren't coming. So we're all staying in one room. And this guy, Brandon, picked up the other room. And Carrie started to know a little bit of the gravity of my situation. She said, let me check with Brandon and see if he would be open to a roommate. And I'm just being honest here. If you really knew me, I don't like having roommates, especially roommates that I don't know. Because if somebody snores and I can't sleep all night, and I'm like, oh man, I'm like, okay, God, little humility here. Just shut up there, and at least you'd be staying at the place. So I got to be honest here. So I Googled him. His name was Brandon. I Googled Brandon, and he's got like 5 kids. He's a Mormon, lives in Utah, knows Russell, and his company actually creates the t-shirts and things for ClickFunnels, which is cool. And I saw it. I'm like, okay, he's cool. I can do that. And so I said, cool, I'm in. I checked with Brandon. He's like, yeah, that's great. So now I was staying at the hotel. I still didn't exactly know how I was going to pay for my half of the room, but I figured I would find a way. I would leverage it on my American Express Gold, which has no limit, but you got to pay it off every single month. I'm like, I'll figure it out later. So now here's what you also have to know. My personal mortgage is coming up that week, and I was able to pay myself just a little bit that I was going to just be able to cover my mortgage. So I would be able to come home, cover my mortgage. That would keep me for another month, but I still don't know about the payroll. So I drive with Carrie and another friend here in town who's a ClickFunnels dude, and he was really super cool. So we drove with him, and I was going to fly back. Now this is a long story, so I hope you're playing along, and you might have to keep track of the names. So and forgive my 32 so's. I don't care. Mark me off. Um, oh, yeah. The other thing that we got to know beforehand is what was I just lost the train of thought. Oh, well, it will come to me. Uh, so we go to, oh, that's the other thing. So there was a sales conference in town. Steve, yes, it was Steve. There's a sales conference in town here, and I had submitted a video that I made with, sorry, Stephanie, thanks for asking. I'm not bringing anybody on. I got to get through this. But if you want to comment, please do. There's a sales video conference happening here in Vegas the same weekend. So Carrie will tell you this, that I got a flight to come back, because I got a one-way flight to come back on Friday, because I didn't know how good Russell would really be. And I'm like, I can't afford to be out of the office for 3 days if Russell's just all hype. I didn't know. I liked his book. I liked him, and he was going to be training for 2 days, but I didn't really know how he was. And my sales video that I created with my buddy Dawson, my sales video was up for an award. So I was a finalist for this award, but I didn't know much about the sales conference. So I thought, 1 in 10, I got a shot at this. This would be cool. I'd love to be there and see what happens. But right now I got to take care of my business. But if Russell's really not that good, then I'll come back. So I planned my flight for Friday, knowing that I could change it at Southwest if I had to. All right, so a lot going on. So sales conference, I'm like, I might be there, I might not. So yeah, I was like, if Russell's good though, I'm all in. If not, I'm going back, because I can't afford to be away from the office when I got to make this thing happen. So Carrie and I get there, and Steve is there, and we all split up, go our own ways. I get to the hotel room. Really cool people, about 200 ClickFunnels people there. And there's maybe 1/3 of them were like me, entrepreneurs trying to build their business. There's another 1/3 who were building funnels for other people in other people's business, and there was another 1/3 who were like Facebook advertisers. So they did the advertising for people who had ClickFunnels. So call them an agency. So that was the other thing. It's like, I knew that I needed to learn Facebook ads. So I thought if I could maybe glean some glimmers of brilliance from some of the agencies that were there, I thought maybe I could make this work, and maybe I could find a way to learn Facebook ads really quick, or find a way to joint venture with one of them or something. I don't know. But that was in the back of my mind. So I get there, and day one comes, 200 people. I'm sitting there with my Carrie and Christina, her sister, and some of my brand new friends here who are sitting there listening. And I got to say, Russell was awesome as a trainer. And immediately I was like, yeah. And you know what? There was something else just telling me I needed to stay for an extra day, besides the fact that Russell was so good. And I didn't know what that is, and we'll find out soon enough. So I stay there all day, and Russell was great. I was pumped, and I was just taking notes feverishly. I was talking to the agencies as much as I could. I was like, if you've ever, know me as a sponge, I was like a sponge on steroids. I was sponging. It was actually really cool for those of you who are speakers and know me. It was so cool to be at a conference where nobody knew me. So I had anonymity and I could be invisible. And I was just another middle-aged bald guy with glasses. All right, so Friday comes, second day. Russell's going on. I meet Brandon, really nice, really cool. And I just enjoyed him. And we both got along fine. That was cool. So on that one. Day 2 comes. All right, now I'm sponging again. I go down. Oh, I forgot to say, I get there, and they have the most beautiful layout in Phoenix, Arizona, with outside in nature, under the sun, and the greatest buffets. Oh, my word. Okay, here's my phone just died. Hope you're hearing me okay. So here's the cool part. Remember this? Mr. Mac and Cheese for every meal for a week. So here I am at the buffet. I like learning whatever. Look at this buffet. It was awesome. Honestly, the food was just worth it. By the way, when I had been at home, I was speaking at different conferences and things before that, and they would give me like gift cards for like Dunkin' Donuts. And usually I'm like, oh, thank you, that's kind of nice. Now I'm like, oh, there's a meal. God bless you. You have no idea. All right, so Friday comes. I'm sponging. I'm eating these beautiful buffets. I can't wait till the next meal. Yeah, food, glorious food. And then in the middle of Friday, I get a text. Regina, who works out of my home for me, the angel, sends me a picture. My water heater blew. I actually started laughing. It was the first time. And by the way, I have been praying to God. I'm like, God, you got to turn my attitude around. My attitude sucks. Everything's pissing me off. Everything's getting me mad. And I got that text and I just laughed. And I'm like, and I didn't want to say what else could go wrong because you know that's when it does. But I'm like, are you kidding me? And so I'm going back and forth during ClickFunnels with Regina, and she's trying to help me find the right, the replacement and what we're going to do. You know, I'm not there. She's here. What am I going to do? She gets prices for me. She gets back to me, and it's going to be $1,500. And that was my mortgage payment. I'm like, are you kidding me? I actually showed my roommate Brandon. I was laughing. I'm like, are you this doesn't happen. I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna get through this? I'm like, okay, God, it's all on you now. I don't know. So the second day, the end of the second day comes. Well, thank you for the sad faces, but it's all good. It really is. The end of the second day comes. Third day starts. I'm flying out on Saturday. But I go to breakfast, and I got to introduce you to another character. So there's another character. Her name is Krista. Krista's in his inner circle. His Carrie, type in his super duper inner circle group. They're people. Carrie, what's the group that Krista's in? His $1 million club or whatever. Well, these are people who brainstorm or mastermind with Russell himself. So they're paying like, I don't know if it's $50,000 or $100,000, and they literally mastermind with him, his inner circle. Yeah, the inner circle. Thank you, Carrie. So Krista was in the audience, and she was just a hoot. She's just boisterous, funny, and I have to tell you, and forgive me if this is inappropriate, I'm sorry, but it sets up a great joke. So Krista is there, and she raised her hand, and she's talking, and she says that Russell was talking on stage about this man who created this funnel, and his target market was men. And so he's explaining the success of it, and Krista goes, I signed up for his funnel. And Russell stops and goes, what? And she goes, I signed up. And he goes, but you understand it's designed for men. And she goes, I checked off that I had a penis. And I was like, oh. But it was so funny. Please don't take it wrong. Yeah, his $100,000 people. And so everybody laughed. Russell turned red. So that said a lot about him. I was loving that. I appreciate that. And he was speechless. And it was funny. So I appreciated that. It was, they were just great people. And I was missing this. I met one of the agency people. Her name is Karen. She was brilliant. Anything she was saying, I was like listening to her. And there was like a little after hours group. And I just could tell she knew her stuff. There was another young lady there. Her name is Olga. And Olga was everybody loved Olga. And I think she's from Russia. Is she from Russia? She's from Russia. But everybody's like hugging her, and she's just grinning from ear to ear, and she's just this like delightful person walking around. And she is also builds funnels for people. And I don't know, I gravitated to her, and I introduced myself, and then I started asking her some questions. So I was sponging off of everyone I could. And I talked to Olga and I talked to Karen. I said, "Hey, can I call you and ask you some questions?" And they both said that they be willing to do a discovery call with me. So in the sales world, in the coaching world, a discovery call is to get to know the client situation and see if there's a match, and see if they would hire you. So I explained to Olga and to Karen. I said, "Look, here's my situation. I got nothing. I would love to talk to you if you're willing, but just know I cannot hire you. I wish I could. I'm just being honest. So if you'd be willing to do the call with me, I would still love it, and I would get to know you, and maybe there's some way I can refer people." So I'm explaining it because I didn't want to try and take advantage of it. And so it was very cool, and both of them said they'd speak to me, and I was like, yes, got their card, cool. So when I got home, I would call them and talk to them. All right, so back to our breakfast buffet on Saturday morning. It was the weirdest thing because I had lunch and breakfast, or excuse me, I had breakfast with some of my new friends, Marie Olson and her dad. He's really cool, and her brother is kind of like Russell's right-hand man, and met all these new people. That was really cool. And so after breakfast with them, I got up and I grabbed my coffee, which I had done every morning. But this weird feeling came across me that I had to have oatmeal. And that was so random because I hardly ever have oatmeal. Once in a while, I mean, I don't mind it, but I was like, I felt it was almost like a God whisper or something. I'm like, okay, hey, Olga, you missed it. I was just talking about you. And stay tuned. We're coming back to you in a second. So I go to get oatmeal, which I was so random, but I'm like, okay, I'm going with this. I got my oatmeal, and I realized I had to then go back and sit down because I couldn't eat it standing up. So I would go back to the table, and there's nobody there except Krista. And all right, so the comedian in me came out, and I just said, "Hey, it's the lady with the penis." Can't believe I'm telling this on Facebook Live, but it's the truth. It's what I said, and she laughed. And then Carrie Nelson comes over and sits with us, and Carrie starts bragging on me and my background and what I've accomplished. And Krista is like in the real estate world, and she's like the top 1% of she's like the top 1% in real estate. And Carrie was bragging about, I'm a speaker and a speaker coach. And Krista says, wow, she says, I've written a book, but I have to give like my first speech ever in a week. And I'm in. I'm like, how can I help? What can I answer for you? So it ended up that we started this conversation, and I just knew somehow in my heart I was supposed to be there and help Krista. Like that was the other reason I stayed for an extra day. I just knew it, and I didn't want anything. I just like, okay, here's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to help, and it's really cool to help one of those, one of those special people, one of those people who already is good, knows their topic, and they're nervous about their speech, and I could help make them better. I'm like, that's what I feel like now I've kind of been put on the planet to do. And so Krista and I just go off, and she's just easy to talk to. As an introvert, we need an extrovert. She's so cool and easy to talk to, so smart. And I'm working it, for those of you who know me, I'm like showing her on a piece of paper the Fripp speech model. And everybody else went back to the ClickFunnels event, and she and I spent an hour and a half there. And I just knew that's what I was supposed to do. It just felt right. I wasn't trying to sell her anything. I'm just like, here's what I'm supposed to be. Through the course of the conversation, Carrie, I think, had mentioned that I do some live events. So she said, tell me about your live events. And of course, being who I am, I had some of those flyers with me just in case. So I pulled it out. I explained it. I said, hey, we're doing a program in Georgia called Unforgettable Presentations. If you're interested, that's right in line with what you're doing. It's after I think it was after the speech she was given. Yeah. But anyway, I explained it to her, and she said, well, how much is it? And so I said, well, there's a live seat, a virtual seat if you can't make it. I know it's kind of last minute. And there's also a VIP. A VIP is a person in front of the room who's getting the live coaching. And boom, she goes, I'm in. VIP. I make things happen. She pulls out her credit card and signs up to be a VIP right there on the spot. Guess how much a VIP is? $1,500. I was like looking up, like, okay, God, you're pretty cool. Wow. I was blown away. So I go back down, or we go back down and spend the rest of the day, and or till lunchtime, and then I had to go catch my flight, and so Uber to the airport. And when I get there, excuse me, before I get there, I get a message from Brandon, and Brandon left me this little handwritten note, and Brandon said, I know what you're going through. Every entrepreneur goes through it. He goes, you'll be fine, and I'm going to cover your hotel room for you. Wow. And he covered the hotel room for me. I didn't know how I was going to cover it. So I fly home, and I get back here, and I got all these notes from Russell, and I'm so excited, but I'm super overwhelmed because I got like 2 weeks to hit the payroll, and I don't want to let my team down. And so I'm just trying to think, okay, what can I do? So I call up Karen, and she gives me some advice, and she's like, your prices of your workshops are too low. She said you have to raise those up because you don't have enough of a gap of a margin in order to pay for the Facebook ads. She goes, if you're going to drive traffic through Facebook ads, you got to have more of a profit margin. Now that was cool to hear, and I needed that. And then I get on with Olga. So Olga, it's so cool you're here. I get on with Olga, and she listened to me ramble, and I'm telling her about every aspect of my business. Poor Olga, you are a saint, listening to me and just going off and telling you about every aspect of my business. And I'm like, blah, what do I do? Now, poor Olga barely knows me, and Olga says, you have to do a perfect webinar. I was like, what? And she goes, do you have the book Expert Secrets? I'm like, yeah, of course I've got that book. And she explained to me that like the 2/3 of the book is literally slide by slide the perfect webinar, Russell Brunson's perfect webinar. So I realized I have the book. And I've done webinars before. The year prior, I tried webinars. I did 4 different webinars and got like 1 person each webinar. And I'm like, this is not a good use of my time. And so I realized that, yeah, I did webinars, but I did them my way. And Russell talks about a different way to do webinars in terms of changing people's smashing people's false beliefs. And anyway, there's a whole psychology, but the book, I can't show you the audible book, but anyway, she says you need to do a perfect webinar. You need to send an email to your own list, because I explained I have a list, but I market to them all the time. She says you have to do a perfect webinar, and you have to send an email to your list. I'm like, well, I can do that because it's not going to cost me anything. Webinars, I love Zoom. When I had done webinars before, I needed Paul, my tech guy, on with me. I couldn't do it alone. Zoom, I could do alone. I called up my buddy Mike Davis. I said, Mike, you got to help me out here and help me host this. And so this was like, I think it was Wednesday, Olga, I talked to you. And like Thursday, I'm like, okay, I got to do this. I'm like, I got the time. I was doing other little things at work I had to do. And it comes Friday, and I sent out a couple email blasts to my list, and I watched people register, and that's cool. I'm like, oh yeah, now I got to put the webinar together. So it comes to I still had my other work doing, Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson. Thanks. All day I was trying to get everything done, but in my mind I'm just procrastinating because I'm gonna have to sit down and do this slide by slide because I got to do it his way. Olga says you got to do it his way. I got to do it his way, and my ways didn't work. So I got nothing to lose. I'm like, okay, I'm just assuming this is God showing me the way. And so about 6 o'clock on Friday night, I sit down with my Audible on my iPhone, and I hit play. And I get to the point where, okay, so here's the webinar. Here's slide one. I hit play, I hit stop, and I make the slide. I hit play, I hit stop, slide two. I make the slide. Hit play, slide three. Okay, so the webinar is scheduled for Saturday at noon. And this is like Friday night. It's like midnight. It's like 1 o'clock. I think it was like 109 slides. And it took me till, I don't remember exactly, but it was either 1 or 3 in the morning. I think it was 3 in the morning. And I had to do the webinar at noon. But I was like, I'm doing it his way because my way doesn't work. I got to learn a new way. I got to let go of my ego and my own thoughts and how this is happening. And so I got the webinar done. I'm all set. Mike and I are on the webinar. I do the webinar, how to own the stage. And I'm going through it, and I got this energy, and I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen, but Russell always also says that, whatever you sell in the webinar, the next 2 or 3 days, you push people to the recordings, and you can kind of do twice what you do in the live webinar, you can do on the recordings. And he was right. And I ended up over the course of the next several days, 5 days I think it was, I did like $2,200 and I was able to cover my payroll. I don't even think I paid myself. So I had some money and that helped me cover it. And Olga, thank you. Carrie, thank you. Brandon, I don't think you're on here, but thank you. And Russell said, do a webinar every week. Do the same one. And so I started doing webinars every single week, varying different outcomes. But I did about $10,000 that month in webinars, which if it wasn't for Olga, and it wasn't for God orchestrating all of this, I don't know if I'd be in business right now. So I don't know if what this means to you, but I felt like I needed to tell the story. Because as an entrepreneur, you're going to have these moments where you don't know where to turn to. Turn up. Because God is the only one who could have orchestrated all of that. And I'm ashamed of my lack of faith in it. But I'm thankful for the faith that I did have. I think I had like half a mustard seed. I don't think Maureen had the whole mustard seed. So that's my story. I know it's been a long one, but I didn't really know how to shorten it. And thank you, Maureen, for also being my God guide, and Kathy, thank you for the love there, and thanks for the encouragement, Maureen and Kathy, to actually do this story. I knew I couldn't do it justice on Sunday, so thanks for your patience. And I need water. I'm dehydrated, but anyway, have faith. God's watching. Keep trusting Him. I need to. I wouldn't be in business if it wasn't for Him. Thank you all for trusting me. And if you're going to count me for my ums and ahs and my so, good luck. I don't give a hoot. Mac and cheese rocks. Russell rocks. But it wasn't just Russell, too. It was like everyone. Olga, thank you. Carrie, thank you. For my friends and followers, thank you. Lourdes, thank you. Lourdes was one of the ones on that first webinar. So there you go. That's all I got. I'm out. God bless.